As the fire died down, a smoke-choked golden retriever refused to leave the scorched porch, growling at anyone who neared a melted trap door beneath his paws. When a firefighter finally pried it open, the stench hit first, then the horror beneath. Shackles, toys, a blinking camcorder. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Let's. The next morning, smoke still hung faintly in the air like a ghost refusing to pass on. The sun crept over the hills in thin, sickly strands of gold, touching the soot-caked grass with a deceptive warmth. The duplex's frame stood scorched and skeletal, a mausoleum of blackened timber and twisted piping. Cooper remained at his post, eyes bloodshot, fur scorched in patches, ribs clearly visible beneath the grime. He hadn't moved from the spot, not even to relieve himself. He sat rigid, eyes fixed on that same scorched section of porch, like a soldier at the tomb of a forgotten king. When Darren pulled up in his dented pickup truck, he wasn't wearing his uniform. Off duty now, but not at peace. He'd slept a total of 40 minutes. The rest of the night had been spent pacing, retracing what he'd seen, the dog's posture, the exact location he guarded, the subtle shiver in his flanks every time someone stepped too close. There was no logical reason for the fixation. Nothing had survived that floor. Or so they thought. Darren crouched a few yards away, speaking in a soft, level tone. "What are you holding on to, boy?" His voice cracked slightly. Cooper didn't acknowledge him, just stared. Another firefighter might have brushed it off, called it loyalty, animal instinct, trauma. But Darren had grown up in the system, foster homes, shelters. He knew the difference between a creature mourning and a creature protecting. There was a purpose behind Cooper's madness, not just love, intent, and it unsettled him. The fire marshal's report would be processed later that week, but Darren already knew the cause. Faulty space heater. The wiring was old, the house uninsured. Tragedy written in bureaucratic ink. But paperwork didn't explain why the dog was standing over the same floorboard like it was a vault door. He took a few cautious steps closer. Cooper let out a warning growl, a low, vibrating sound, not of threat, but protest. Darren stopped. "I'm not here to take it," he said, raising his palms. "I just want to know what she left behind." A sudden gust caught the corner of a scorched welcome mat, flipping it just slightly. Darren's eyes narrowed. Something caught the light beneath it, metallic, buried in ash. He didn't move toward it. Cooper had already shifted to cover it again. No bark, no bite, just that steady, immovable gaze, not grief, guarding. The air beneath the trapdoor didn't move. It clung to Darren's face like a wet rag soaked in decay. Every breath tasted of rusted iron and something fouler, an ancient rot buried and sealed, never meant to rise. The crawl space wasn't large, but it seemed to stretch wider the longer he looked, as though the darkness itself recoiled from the beam of his flashlight. Each step down the blackened ladder groaned under his weight. The rungs, half-eaten by flame and time, felt brittle, insubstantial. But he pressed forward, heart hammering harder with every foot. Not from fear alone, though there was plenty of that, but from the undeniable certainty that Cooper had brought him here on purpose. The flashlight's beam sliced through the gloom, landing on a child's doll. Its face melted into a plastic scream, arms twisted as if mid-struggle. Nearby, toy trucks lay partially fused to the floor. Their cheerful paint bubbled and black. There were shoes, mismatched and tiny, some pink, some blue. One still held the brittle remains of a sock. Darren crouched slowly, fingers trembling as he picked up a cracked plastic lunchbox, its cartoon dinosaur half-scorched. Inside, a few marbles, a pink barrette, a child's drawing, smudged but legible, of a house, 2 stick figures, and a tall shadow looming above them. His hand snapped back as if burned. He turned. To the left, chains clinked faintly in the stale air. Heavy iron cuffs hung from a low concrete wall, bolted deep, edges worn down from friction and time. Scratches fanned out beneath them, claw marks gouged into stone. Not random, desperate, layered, one atop another. Darren counted them without meaning to. 4, 5, 7. His throat closed. He tried to speak, but found only a whisper. Jesus! And then he saw it, the camcorder. It sat like an accusation, miraculously unscathed, lens still intact, red light blinking with quiet insistence. The battery had survived, or been changed, recently. Darren's spine stiffened. A fresh wave of nausea surged in his gut, not just from what the room revealed, but what it implied. This place hadn't been abandoned for long. Cooper barked once above, sharp, urgent. Darren didn't answer. He couldn't. His thoughts scattered like leaves in a hurricane. This wasn't just a hidden room. It was a secret kept alive, maintained, maybe even used. He backed up the ladder slowly, careful not to disturb more than necessary. As his head emerged above the charred floorboards, Cooper greeted him not with affection, but with watchful calm. Not rescue, witness. The truth had waited. So had the dog. Eleanor Whitaker's portrait still hung above the mantel in the town library, smiling, eyes warm, hands folded in gentle grace. She had been their saintly widow, a quiet anchor in a forgotten Kentucky town, the last of a dying generation. But as the footage played out in the sterile chill of the police station, that portrait became a haunting lie. Darren watched the tapes with clenched fists and a stomach coiled like barbed wire. The videos spanned decades, grainy VHS to clearer digital recordings, each timestamp a marker of a child's stolen time. The camera never shook. It was placed with care, framed like a diary. The room was always the same. Concrete walls, a single flickering bulb. In every video, Eleanor appeared. Her voice was gentle, cooing, precise, soft, like a lullaby laced with arsenic. "You're special," she'd whisper. "The world out there is broken, but I'll make you right." And the children, thin, pale, stripped of names, nodded through sobs. Some resisted, some pleaded, some just sat still, eyes vacant, like the fight had been drawn out drop by drop. It was psychological dismemberment, slow and calculated. She wasn't angry in any clip, never screamed, never struck. That made it worse. She believed in what she was doing. She was patient, methodical, like she thought she was saving them. Word spread fast. Reporters descended like carrion. Satellite trucks blocked the road leading to the duplex's husk. The town mayor issued a statement calling it a dark chapter in their community's history. But behind closed doors, there was more than grief. There was shame. People had brought Eleanor meals, sat beside her in church, asked her to babysit their children. No one had ever questioned her. And the children, their faces, flashed again and again on every news network. Some were matched to missing persons reports filed across state lines. Others were too young or too changed to be immediately identified. A national task force was formed. Cold case files were reopened. Families braced for hope or horror. But the town? It bent under the weight of disbelief. Darren couldn't look at anyone without wondering what other truths were buried in politeness, in tradition, in blind trust. How many had smiled at that woman? How many had handed her their faith like an offering? Cooper's vigil had been more than loyalty. It had been an indictment, a demand to see. And now no one could look away. The smell of char still lingered in the air, weeks after the last embers died. Locals said the ground at Eleanor Whitaker's lot wouldn't grow grass again, that the soil itself had absorbed too much horror. But in the wreckage, amid yellow tape and scorched earth, something had shifted. The lie had burned away. What remained was raw and true and impossible to ignore. Cooper had done what no human could or would. Where neighbors had looked the other way, where firefighters had cleared the scene and closed the file, it was a smoke-wheezing, age-lined golden retriever who refused to walk away, who insisted there was more. And there was. The media called him the Ashes Guardian. Headlines everywhere bore his name. But Cooper didn't know fame. He only knew duty. He slept curled on Darren's floor now, head resting near the boots that had returned for him when no one else would. Darren didn't speak about what he'd seen in the crawlspace, not to reporters, not even to the detectives, but he carried it in his eyes. He fed Cooper steak that first night, no questions asked, and when the dog whimpered in his sleep, Darren sat beside him in silence until dawn. People began showing up, not just reporters or officers, families, grieving mothers, and hollow-eyed fathers holding outdated photos like sacred relics. They didn't want interviews, they just wanted to see the dog, to kneel by him, to say thank you. Some cried into his fur, some said nothing at all. At town meetings, the old guards shifted uneasily. Leaders once proud of their spotless image now faced hard truths. "We missed this," someone said. "We let this happen." But Cooper's name came up again and again, not as a novelty, as a reckoning. Children began drawing him, crayon sketches taped to church doors and school lockers. Not leaping, tongue-out cartoons, but Cooper as he had been, standing firm on a porch of soot and ruin, guarding a truth the town had buried deep. Darren didn't like the word hero. It felt too clean, too celebratory. But when he watched Cooper, who still flinched at certain sounds, who still looked toward fire-blackened spaces like ghosts waited there, he knew what real courage looked like. It wasn't loud. It didn't demand recognition. It simply refused to look away. And because of that, neither could the rest of them.